The United States of America is facing an emergency tonight. And no, it is not the emergency of the clock ticking to midnight without legislated funding for the American government. We've seen that clock tick to midnight before on nights like this. The emergency the United States of America is facing tonight is an emergency the United States of America has created for the world. And that emergency is that the President of the United States, in his public appearance today, proved that he is mentally incapable and emotionally incapable of fulfilling his constitutional duties as President of the United States. In other words, there is no President of the United States as we knew it. There is no functioning intelligence, no functioning judgment mechanism within the mind of the current holder of the title, President of the United States. And that person is also the holder of the nuclear codes that could destroy the planet in seconds. And he is, much to the horror of the commanding officers of the American military who listened to him today, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world. Much of the news media made the mistake of believing that all of the American commanding generals and admirals were being summoned to Quantico, Virginia, to listen to the small man of small experience who is currently the Secretary of Defense. That was obviously a fraudulent reason for demanding that all the generals and admirals fly from all over the world, leaving their command posts, to listen to a speech. It was obviously always just a setup for Donald Trump to harangue that audience with what turned out to be stream of consciousness madness, complete with hallucinations and an endless stream of pathological lies. A group of officers who earned their jobs in ways that Donald Trump never could, had to sit there and listen to a clown who stood before them in what appears to be a homemade brew of orange makeup slathered all over his face because he thinks it makes him look better. And I guess maybe we should accept Donald Trump's judgment about that one thing, that the madman orange makeup he slathers on himself makes him look better. Maybe it does. We don't know. Maybe the actual sight of the actual color of his 79-year-old skin is much worse than the orange clown confection that he chooses, but we don't know. Or maybe the orange junk on his face is yet another proof that the man has no capacity to make a judgment about anything, including the way he looks. Never mind nuclear weapons. What was he thinking backstage when his Secretary of Defense, who had to promise to stop drinking to get confirmed by the Senate, insulted all of the commanding officers in the room with this kind of idiocy?
It's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are.
Okay, Pete. How about fat presidents? How a president who has been fat every day of his political career, is that a bad look? All of those generals can button their uniform jackets. All of those admirals can, every one of them. So there's the Secretary of Defense, who may or may not be managing his reported drinking problem, telling all of those commanding officers that they better never look as bad as Donald Trump, who can't even button his suit coat jacket. There was some suspense in the room today when Donald Trump was giving his speech. There was no suspense about would he cross the line that you never cross with the military as president and get political. Everyone knew he was going to do that. Everyone knew that he doesn't know there's a line. Everyone knew he was going to foolishly waste the admirals and generals' time telling them about how many swing states he won. And of course he did. The suspense in the room was whether the very, very tired, almost sleepy 79-year-old man at the microphone was going to make it through that 1 hour and 11-minute speech. And there were times in the middle of a sentence that it would seem like he just might drop right there, might not even finish that sentence. And what he seemed to be showing to the generals and the world is that he might not have the physical strength to make it through the 3 years, 3 months, and 20 days left of his presidency. Is that what has given J.D. Vance such a spring in his step lately? Is that why the vice president looks so happy these days? Donald Trump has never looked physically weaker or wearier than he did today. Weaker in every sense of that word, physically, mentally, because Donald Trump is uneducable. He still doesn't understand why he walked into a room of military commanders today and faced silence.
Thank you very much, Pete. A great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Don't laugh. You're not allowed to. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay, because we're all on the same team. And I was told that, sir, you won't hear it. You won't hear it. I said, we got to loosen these guys up a little bit. So you just have a good time.
He didn't loosen them up. They didn't have a good time. They didn't applaud. Politely applauded only at the end. Donald Trump lied to the commanders repeatedly, and they knew it. He told them Ukraine is the worst war since World War II. Everyone sitting in that room knows that the war Donald Trump avoided by getting a doctor's excuse, the Vietnam War, which in Vietnam is correctly called the American War, killed over 4 million people. It was in what was then South Vietnam, North Vietnam, and as the United States spread to Cambodia and Laos, the war across those borders was much worse than what you're seeing in Ukraine. And he insulted the commanders with his lies about war. He told them that Portland, Oregon, quote, looks like a war zone, spoken by someone who has no idea what a war zone looks like. Everyone in his audience knows what a war zone looks like. Everyone in his audience today knew that Donald Trump was lying. Donald Trump was telling the kind of lie that should concern his doctors and his family when he said Portland looks like a war zone. He hallucinated dialogue that has never happened. And his 79-year-old brain cells couldn't find words that were right there, just out of reach, like this.
The Iran nuclear power, the Iran, all of the great power that we thought existed, we blew out to kingdom. We took advantage of it.
We blew it out to kingdom. Of course, what he wanted to say was, we blew it out to kingdom come.
So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs I've never seen. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said, it's great. I don't want to do it. I guess I could do it. But eventually, bad things are going to happen. And it only takes once.
Imagine crossing 10 time zones to hear that. This is an emergency for the United States of America and the world. And those generals and admirals know that. They know that their commander-in-chief is lost today. They listened to him today. And it was unlike anything they have ever listened to before in their lives. It is much worse than the first version of Donald Trump they saw in his first term as president. What they saw was something much worse than a president falling downstairs, and they all know it. They were forced to listen to the most ignorant man in the room tell them that he is the first person in the world to figure out how to stop wars.